Hey there, Ryan Dahl with PraiseCharts. Let me tell you something. There are just a couple of guys that I would say have had a significant impact on me as a worship leader, musician on so many levels. Guys like this I look up to, and they sort of define how I play the guitar, how I sing piano, or how I sing, how I play the piano, play the guitar, all these kind of different things that all go into this sort of heart of building ourselves as a worship leader and people we just look up to. And Matt Maher is definitely one of those guys. I'm sure he's the same for you. He's had a tremendous influence on so many of us for a long haul of time, probably 15, 20 years. I don't know how long it's been, but today we get to have an honest, very personal conversation with Matt, and I'm looking forward to having you join me. So Matt's right here. Let's talk with him now. Hey, Matt.
Hey.
There I am.
Good to see
Man,
you.
I really mean that. I was saying that you have had a tremendous impact on me. I've seen you for, the long haul of your ministry ever since Your Great is Enough, Your Grace is Enough, and perhaps even before then, that song, even in particular, I just got to tell you, that gave me the tools with my guitar to stand up in front of my church on Sunday morning and feel like the band was going to sound great. We had the ability to sing it. We were going to say something important and meaningful, and just kind of getting to the end of that. And it was like, I just want more of that. I love the groove, the rhythm, all of that stuff that you bring into worship. So it's very personal to me, and I'm super honored to have you in our show today.
Well, those are very kind words, and thank you. That song was written either this year or last year. It was 20 years ago.
Right.
So, which is a weird thing to say because
Yeah.
no one expects to get to a point in life where you're like, oh, I wrote that 20 years ago.
Right. I know.
It's pretty surreal.
Yeah, totally.
But
and
huge honor.
Yeah. But, you didn't just come and go. You stayed through year after year, and you continue to bring us songs through the journey of your life. We were just sharing about how, you've kind of created your little studio in your backwoods there, and I've done similar, and we've raised kids over this whole journey that we've been on. So I don't know, what are the ages of your kids? What season of life are you in right now?
Yeah, well, I'm in all things all at once season. So
Okay.
7, 9, and 11. So
All right.
we're cranking on all cylinders right now.
Yes,
So.
yes. I was hearing that perhaps they're taking up some of the internet bandwidth right now. They got all the devices. They're all going on everywhere, right?
I'm sure that's totally what's happened, and I'm very sorry.
Yeah, that's no problem. No problem. Well, like I say, I had a couple of questions I just wanted to ask you just generally about your music, and then about your ministry and kind of sort of theological background that you bring to the table, because I feel like you bring something so unique. So just musically, to start out with that, how would you define the musical style, or what is that it factor, that you're trying to bring to this Christian music worship world? Because it's certainly unique and very compelling. What you bring on the piano and the guitar, and with the way that you write. How would you describe that?
Wow, it's a great question. I think what I would say is that I'm still a student of music, and
Yeah.
so I had a pretty kind of 3-chapter developmental, I guess, three chapters of development as a musician. One was growing up, I played in concert band, I played in jazz band, I played in youth orchestra. I studied music in college for 7 years. Simultaneously at that, which was the second one, which was I was also playing in a rock band. So I was a keyboard player in a rock band. So I was learning cover songs, and I was learning how to play by ear, and I was writing songs. And then I was also a jazz major in college. And so I think those kind of 3 things all sort of combined to, I would say that I had a strong tendency towards improvisation.
Yep.
So that when I met Jesus in my 20s and got involved in worship, and I did listening to worship music, excuse me. When I started listening to worship music, I was really hyper focused on the things that they were saying in between the songs.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned how to lead worship because
Mm-hmm.
I come out of like a background and it's way more liturgy. There isn't a ton of free time. Now, I came to Jesus through a charismatic Catholic community, but overall, so much of the musical expression, it's pretty preset.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was just playing music, singing songs at a Bible study, there was no form. So
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to figure out what connect tissue between songs. It can't just be like, oh, you sing a song and then pull out the music and sing another song. And so when I'd listen to these worship albums, I started hearing like it was Delirious, Live and in the Can.
Yeah. Oh
Hearing the
man.
hearing the
Same
things that
thing.
they would say, hearing these like flow moments that would sort of
Yeah.
spontaneously happen. And that I think was like the last component, which is obviously the most important, which is your faith.
Yeah.
So as I've grown as a believer, I've pulled from these different chapters of my life. So sometimes I'll pull from the rock and roll background, sometimes I'll pull from the jazz background,
Yeah.
sometimes I'll pull from the classical background. And for me, it's some of what I do as a writer is kind of reminding people of things that have been said that need to keep being said. Yeah, they
Mm-hmm.
need to keep being said. That like
Mm-hmm.
that we shouldn't. There's some things that are important that we have to keep saying,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the reason why we have them. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's a hymn, sometimes that's a, it's obviously scripture. Goes without saying, and then sometimes it's stuff that other men and women who follow Jesus, the saints, things that they've said.
Yeah.
And so to me, music is like it's a form of expression.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I have to do because it's how I'm made. Um, and Yeah, and I think along the way, I've gravitated towards things that, in particular, like that do feel more of a um, timeless, I guess I would say, feel like not particular one era of music, but just era of music where there's stuff that sounds where it feels like, wow, this has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm always kind of searching for that in melodies and sound.
Hmm. I'm really hearing, as I hear you share about your musical history, that fusion of you've got the musical, like the technical knowledge. It was similar for my own life. I took, conservatory piano until I was like 16 or 17, and then felt like I wanted to make this shift to teach my heart how to play this music. And I had to like break free from the conservatory and hired a jazz teacher and sat with him. My lessons were like just sitting and watching him play. It was like learning through inspiration. But now, I mean, even in the role that I have, both as a worship leader and running praise charts, it's just like I love to have the depth of knowledge about how all this music works and kind of that heart connection to, how to speak, how to, between the songs, how to flow with worship, how to improvise, all of that. And so
Yeah.
I find that
And
super
and there's
fascinating.
Yeah, and you're so it's so true. Like there is a technical aspect to it. There's
Mm-hmm.
just like there's a technical aspect to public speak, to learning how to communicate.
Yeah.
And music is a form of communication, just the
Yeah.
music itself. And then you add lyrics in it and so there is a intuitive nature to it that I think grace uh sort of compounds on
Yeah.
and even makes more effective. Some people are just more sensitive to the emotions and feelings of others, but I think the Holy Spirit can also magnify that
Yeah.
and make it less inward focused or more pastoral
Yeah.
for sure.
Hey, so you've kind of hinted at this already, but I also just wanted to ask you more theologically. I'll just sort of throw you a lob here as to like, how would you define that unique perspective that you bring to the table as someone who is, bringing the truth through these songs? But there's a particular perspective I know that you come from, particularly with with your Catholic background, and then, speaking so strongly to, the worldwide church. So give us a sense of like
Yeah.
how you feel you fit in that picture for us.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, obviously I was born and raised Catholic, but there's plenty of people in every denomination that can be raised in a tradition of religious practice, but
Yeah.
not actually really have a look at God as someone that wants to have an active relationship with you.
Hmm.
And so the practice itself can become a way of doing Christianity, but we're not human doings, we're human beings.
Right.
So, in my 20s, like I said, I had a powerful experience on a youth retreat where I was playing music in the house band,
Hmm.
and and there was a skit for teenagers, and I was in the back of the room, and I ended up getting wrecked by the Holy Spirit in the middle of it.
Wow.
So for the rest of the weekend, every time I tried to sing a song, I start crying, which was
Wow.
terrible. But it I think that was definitely that like a moment of conversion. It was the weekend of my 21st birthday. I think the background that I come out of now is I'm still a practicing Catholic very much.
Yeah.
As a songwriter within the larger scope of the church, I've really come to lean on some scriptures to help me frame, okay, everyone's got a different gift and a different role, and what do I think mine is. And early on, it was about 2005, I was working full time in church ministry, and I did a Bible study on the things that Jesus prayed and said on the way to the cross.
Mm-hmm.
And by that point, Chris Tomlin had recorded Your Grace Is Enough. I was leading worship all the time. I was writing more and more songs. But I remember being at a Passion conference in 2005 and standing in Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, where I live now, and hearing 11,000 mostly Baptists,
Hmm.
college students, singing a song that I wrote. And it caused me as much cognitive dissonance to 11,000 Baptists sing a song I wrote as much as it probably would have costed. It probably would have caused as much cognitive dissonance in all of them
For
to know that a
them.
Catholic wrote that song.
I
And
love it.
so, and I was like, well, something's happening here.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about it wasn't about my career. And so I got home, and I'm moving further in the spring towards Easter, and I found, I hate to say I found it. I'd heard it before, but I found John 17 in a specific way that spring.
Hmm.
That if you're not familiar with it, it's the longest prayer Jesus prays in the Bible. It's right where it's in between the Last Summer and the Garden of Gethsemane. He prays this prayer that he says, Father, I pray that they may be one as you and I are one.
Mm-hmm.
And my heart broke in a
Hmm.
way because I realized that I'd never really agreed with this prayer with my life. I'd never really contended for it. And here I am, a professional Christian working at a church, and I'm trying to be a follower of Jesus. And here's the longest prayer that he prays in the Bible, and it's real specific. Do I agree? Do I agree with it? So, so I just started agreeing with it, and I
Yeah.
think my song. What I realized was that my songs could become a way of agreeing with Jesus in that prayer,
Right.
because songs create common ground.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Yeah.
I think I was naturally God. There's in the history of Christianity, there are so many incredible thought leaders and philosophers and prophets and teachers and theologians and preachers and revivalists. It's inexhaustible, the list. But I really gravitated at the point I was gravitating towards St. Augustine, and I didn't know that he was sort of a place of common ground for so many believers from different nations. So a lot of it was just I was reading Augustine and being inspired by his view on grace and the gospel and the power of it, and write songs. And then all of a sudden it's like people are like, dude, I love this song so much. And I just thought, Christ is Risen was written after a Ukrainian Catholic priest preached to me over the phone on what he was gonna, because we were doing this young adult Bible study work night in Phoenix. This is like 2008, and his name is Father Andrei Turovsky, and he starts telling me how every Easter in the Eastern Orthodox Church, they march around the sanctuary holding up the book of the Gospels, chanting, "Christ is risen from the dead, pulling over death by death, and redeeming us from the grave." And so I just had that image of people holding up the word of God and marching. And then that's what, all of a sudden, that song was written. So very early on in that sort of in area, and kind of the mid, from like 2002 to 2009, so much of my songwriting by that point really got shaped by a burden for unity, being drawn towards specific, I think, historical figures, whether it's a St. Augustine or like more recent C.S. Lewis, others obviously, we see Thomas Aquinas, and then reading other theologians, and realizing the things that most Christians hold in common. It's pretty substantial, and we need to sing about those things. They're really important, and that's what worship music, was really a movement. At that point, it was really about recentering around the sovereignty of God, of just that this really big God we serve. Jesus is, his death, resurrection. It's the centerpiece of our faith. So in some ways, being around other worship leaders, whether it was a Matt Redman, who's become a dear friend, and Chris Tomlin and we've written a lot of songs together. I mean, he's just a brother, and finding this common ground, it can just sort of create a sense of permission of like, yeah, I think this is a really good thing, and this feels like a burden that I'm supposed to keep carrying. And so, I ended up marrying a Methodist. A friend of mine used to joke and say, "You love Protestants so much, you're probably going to marry one." And I did. So, I think in John 17 now, it's the mission statement of our marriage. So I think
Right
John
on.
17 is a big. The new one that I'm thinking a lot about is in Ephesians, where it talks about the reconciliation of all things. And it's kind of like, I feel like in this next season, that's the thing that keeps coming back to me, of like, how does worship fit in the reconciliation of all things to Christ?
Right. Beautiful. Well, Matt, I want to take some time to kind of dive into some of these songs that you've been writing. We're going to get kind of up close and personal with them here. I've got, as you can see in the Praise Charts world, we've been following you for all 20 years. When you started, if it was 20 years ago or just before then, we were just 5 years old then. And here we are in our 25th year. And we probably got hundreds of songs. Everything you've ever done. Look at this. All the work that we have put into the Matt Maher world. So you've provided some great songs. And this is your most recent album, The Stories I Tell Myself. I think we've charted most of it. Some of the stuff we've put to orchestra, choir, all that. We're going to look at some of that together here. But could you just tell me a little bit about like The Stories I Tell Myself? What did you mean when you said that as an album cover? Like what does this album represent in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think it represents a crossroads where, like, a lot of people, I think I was struggling with figuring out what the next season of life looked like in the middle of the pandemic. I was struggling a bit with depression, anxiety, coming to terms with that through examining my relationships, and I think ultimately the album is a reflection on friendship with God and friendship with others. And that song in particular is really it was a way out of a sort of a negative cycle I was in, of just kind of feeling like I didn't really know if I was supposed to keep doing what I was doing, kind of going, uh, you know, am I, and it's like sort of like God, like, do you want to stop? What do you want me to do?
Hmm.
And some of that could have been my ego, just
Hmm.
feeling certain pressure of going like, all right, well, you're in your 40s, boomer. Like, I mean, no, I'm not really a boomer,
Yeah.
but just kind of that sense of like, should I quit? Should I quit doing what I'm supposed to do? I was struggling with my self confidence a bit.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of it's because it's so much of was defined by what I did, and
Hmm.
you have to kind of get. It's good, it's healthy in life. COVID was a lot of things, but there was a bit of a retreat in it for me, in the
Hmm.
sense of like I had to kind of go away and rediscover my identity
Hmm.
as a son, as a child of God,
Hmm.
and go, well, if I can't tour and I can't play and I can't even lead worship, like who am I?
Yeah.
And which is really, really good. It's good.
Hmm.
It's a really good, healthy reminder. And I had a great support system, great friends, great family around me. And but what emerged out of it was that this song became a turning point for me, because I realized that my imagination, which is the thing that can fuel your creativity as a songwriter and even as a worship leader, was turning against me. So the gift that God had given me to tell stories through songs, to paint pictures and draw landscapes about grace, mercy, salvation, freedom, it was just telling horrible stories about me.
Hmm.
And when I read Grace is Enough, what inspired it was reading the story of Jacob
Hmm.
and hearing about God wrestling with Jacob. So I had to go back to those stories of
Hmm.
Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and, uh, Joseph and Moses. Um, and though, so it just became a way. It was funny. I had the title of the song written before I had the song written, but I knew exactly what it was there are these stories that I keep telling myself that like my dad had struggled a lot with anxiety and depression. So it's like, I'm going to end up just like my dad. My I'm failing as a father. I've been around. I miss so much time being on the road.
Hmm.
Can I make it up?
Hmm.
So it's all that anxiety,
Hmm.
generalized sort of anxiety and fear, creating subconscious narratives that if you don't actively confront with the goodness of God and the truth of who you are in Christ, man, they can just wreak havoc.
Hmm.
And so this song became a way of doing that. Just like Your Grace is Enough, what in some ways was God's way of allowing me to remind myself. I was confronting my own loneliness with
Hmm.
grace.
Hmm.
So a lot of worship music gets written by people in holes who are
Yeah.
trying to sing their way out.
Yeah.
That's
I'm sure
kind
that
of the side that's strange.
the pandemic probably gave us some, I mean, it certainly did give some incredible songs of worship, through all these folks like you guys who are wrestling through, and, life can't just go on just normally. Well, it didn't for most of us, but it's particularly if you're a musician and an artist and a traveling performer, quote unquote, anything in public, it's like life shuts down, and some honest
You and I
questions.
are having this, yeah, you and me are having this conversation now, but I can see your face. And so it was the
Yeah.
weirdest thing to stare into your phone and people are like, hey, can you go on Instagram for minutes and like sing
Yeah.
some songs? And it's like, but like my whole musical formation has been being around people.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a central element to my faith that, the word became flesh and dwelt among us, and it changed the human experience,
Mm-hmm.
but it made it more important, not less.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
And so that was the hardest thing. It was technology for me,
Hmm.
and not knowing what role I really wanted it to play in my life.
Hmm. Can you just let's just do a little flyby of some of these
Yeah,
songs and some themes that kind of came out now that you're giving us a picture of this season,
yeah.
both internally and, yeah, during that season of the 2020, 21. in there. So just as you look at some of these song titles, like any quick thoughts or stories
Oh yeah, I
or
mean the
things that
Lord's
stand out?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they also, the Lord's Prayer was Brian Fowler, who's a producer, was trying to teach his kids how to pray the Lord's Prayer, and
Yeah.
started the song and said he felt the Holy Spirit say it's supposed to finish with me. And what he didn't know was
Hmm.
that I pray that prayer with my wife and kids every night. We have for 13 years.
Hmm.
So we pray the Our Father every day as a family. So
Hmm.
it was like such a mercy, and it was kind of after I'd written the stories, and so it kind of came as a way of kind of going, oh hey, you're already at the basics. Just just find a way to sing what you're already doing.
Right. Yeah.
In the room was actually, the chorus was written a week before the pandemic started, and it
Hmm.
became a bit of a personal anthem, because the chorus is really about wanting to be in the moments where God is doing something.
Yeah.
So, and that one was written with Chris Brown and Mia Fields. We were actually at a songwriting camp in Charlotte the weekend before the pandemic did, but the verses weren't right. So the song sat around for most of the pandemic.
Hmm.
And I just kept thinking about what happens in church and what happens when Jesus is in the room,
Yeah.
and kind of rewrote the verse around that. So
Oh
it's
man,
been
I
a lot of
love
fun to
the
sing that one
chorus.
live.
The chorus is such a singable, such a, I don't know, some melodies you're like, oh, that's just so right. It's so perfect in some way, and flows so great. So when I mentioned
It
this
it
album,
came out of it.
yeah,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Well, I was going to say the chorus melody came, I think Mia Fields draft of it. She like woke up singing it,
Hmm.
which I was like, I wish I could do that. Write songs,
You got to
sleep.
work at it.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Wow. And then, yeah, back to the Lord's Prayer. I wanted to kind of dive into the Lord's Prayer with you a little bit, and just that song. We do it at our church. The first time I heard it, and I'm at a Mennonite Brethren church, which is, slightly on the conservative side, but it's like when we lay down a little bit of groove and rhythm, it's like, okay, are we going to do this? But it's the Lord's Prayer. So what are they going to say, right? We're singing the Lord's Prayer. Excuse me. So, but obviously we can see through praise charts that the church has really grabbed on. It's been a significant song. And like I was just sharing with you, we just created a choral arrangement for it. So like my dream always with some of these really great songs is, let's get 200 people on the stage. Let's put 100 of them in the orchestra pit, 100 in the choir loft, and let's just let this place lift. Now, obviously, that's not a small local church experience, but some people, hey, they might have a trumpet and a sax and a flute. Call that your orchestra. That's good. But the
Well,
resources are
it's
here if you want to just let
yeah.
the roof lift with a song like
Well,
this.
yeah. We really wrote this one melodically so that it
Hmm.
could just be a small 200-seat church could sing it
Hmm.
a cappella. We really
Definitely.
wanted it to be something where people could just almost chant.
Yeah. But then it's got, this is what some of the greatest songs are. It's kind of like King of Kings is kind of like that. Another song from Hillsong where it's like you could just do it just on the piano, or it could just erupt with like the full symphonic choral orchestral sound. And I just love songs that can span that kind of breadth. So I thought maybe we could just, I don't know, I'm going to assume that some people maybe haven't actually heard the song or know it.
Yeah,
And so I thought we'll just like play through a little bit of it. It's a
let's
track
do it.
that we made, and we'll just kind of do this as a bit of a director's cut. So like maybe we'll talk
I
through
like
it.
it.
You could sing a little bit, we could do the little Matt Maher, Ryan Dahl duet, whatever. So here we
I
go.
love it.
This is like, this is a track we made, but it matches your recording.
It
So,
is. So
oh
this
man, come
section
on.
is actually from the live recording, and
Yeah.
we combined the live and the studio recordings together. So it's interesting.
So great.
So then the vocal comes in, Father, let your will be done. And if in the morning I'd tell you sing it down the octave. Don't, if you're a guy, don't kill your voice.
Have you seen people do this in different keys if they can't get up that
yeah.
high? Like, what's the key range that people do this song in typically?
I do it usually in G.
Oh yeah.
And a whole step down, and it works 8.
I like the it has such a solid groove that you can really like settle into, right?
Yes, for sure. I love those 3 chords. There was just enough to kind of make it stand out.
Yeah. Here we go.
Repeat.
Father, let your kingdom come. See, and then there's some choir parts. They can get those background vocals in there.
Oh, you got the holy holies.
Oh man, come on. We bring it down.
No, actually, those are theologically important too.
Oh, okay.
That's the hallowed be thy name part.
Yeah, yeah.
So we sort of had to work it in with the choir.
Yeah. So when he brought you this song, how much of it did he have? Did he have all this put together, or did you bring a certain element to it as well?
He had a rough outline. I think we kind of massaged the melody a little bit on this part, and then basically the bridge was myself. I sort of sang it, the melody of it, the first time I walked into the studio and just started singing.
This bridge.
Yeah, it's yours, it's yours.
Yeah.
And I think it was the first time it was it's yours, it's yours, it's yours, it's yours. And it felt a little bit like a tongue twister. And the all yours, it was like enough of a change where once again, it's like the thing about with lyrics, you're making small, like with chords, you're making small changes, but they have a pretty drastic effect.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna bring it up here a little bit through the end, so we'll just listen through. I like some of those chords, different chords in the end there, like you were saying. Here we go. Holy, holy. Father, let your will be done.
As in heaven, right here in my heart.
And it just kind of ends just
Great.
with the quietness like that.
Yeah. And a lot of times when I do it live, I'll go back into the bridge kind of more quiet if you're looking for a transition between songs of just say, it's yours. It's yours, all yours, all yours.
Yeah.
Just as kind of a way to, if you're in the bridge in between, depending on where it is in your set, how you want to bridge it between songs. So
beautiful.
I'm actually about to release like an acoustic kind of Sunday morning version that we did. That should be coming out pretty soon.
Right on. We will have it for sure. Yeah. We usually like to chart all those different versions of the song because people are looking for accessible ways. Like if you don't have the choir, orchestra, full band and all that, you want a really good arrangement, like in the right key and the right sort of flow, and you don't maybe have all the holy holies of the choir because it's not in your tool chest as a church, but that's totally okay. So
100%.
Really,
yeah.
A couple other quick songs I just wanted to look at. So Matt Redman, you were mentioning you got a great friendship with him, and this is probably one of the most recent. Oh, here, I got to show it. I'm just looking at it.
Yeah.
Unconditional Love. So this is newer, just kind of hotter off the press, but little quick.
Yeah.
Give me a little quick background to this one.
Yeah. So Matt made a record. He did a live record at an old Spanish mission in California. Needed some help getting the church to allow him to do it. So he called the only Catholic he knew. And so we made some phone calls, and they were happy to host him. And it was a really special night. And this was a song that he just hadn't finished, that he had actually started with two other Kearns and Henry Seeley. And um, just was trying to find a way to kind of finish it out. And so I think we tweaked the verses a little bit, and then really I think focused on the bridge. And I loved this line that I think he had come up with: "End of all striving, a new way of living." Uh,
Mm-hmm.
which I think it was like a 1-2 punch. We sort of combined on that. That one of my favorite quotes by a pope in recent memory was Pope Benedict, who said that evangelization was simply teach people the art of living. That living is like a way of art.
Hmm.
That like living a life, uh, you know, in and of itself was a way of art, which I thought beautiful. So, yeah, I mean that song is it's really just a beautiful song about the unconditional love of God. And but that whole album is fantastic. It's some of Matt's best work.
Yeah.
Really, really happy for him.
Beautiful. One other quick song I wanted to touch on was this The In
Oh boy,
Between
yeah.
from The Chosen. So, what an honor. I mean, what just an experience we've all had as Christians, just participating in the journey of that movie unfolding and then continuing to grow, and it's just been amazing. I personally, like, I don't get shivers in very many movies, but man, when all those fish showed up in that boat, I could feel all the stuff shivering in my spine, like I was there. Like, wow, this is an emotional experience. That was just
Yeah.
one example. I'm sure we've all got stories of what it's been like to watch it anew and afresh. So tell me your experience being on the inside and offering up this song to
Wow.
the series.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it like very much, right? So even as a songwriter, I have a visual imagination,
Yeah.
but seeing this the New Testament through, and it's not just the director Dallas, a whole team of people, even the people working on the script. There's a whole it's
Mm-hmm.
a it's hundreds of when you see the
Mm-hmm.
final episode, you're seeing just the sum efforts of so many people. And it's interesting, that I, as a creative person, was able to watch this scene between Mary Magdalene and Nicodemus and write this song. I had no idea that that was the first scene they ever wrote for the show.
Really?
And yeah, and so um, I just wrote the song with a guy named um, Judah
Acres?
Akers, and yeah, and we wrote the song together, and he was gonna write the song off this line from The Chosen, and I hadn't really seen a whole episode yet. This was like in
Hmm.
January of 2021,
Hmm.
but I watched the scene, and the scene alone was so good that I knew exactly what to do as a
Hmm.
songwriter.
Hmm.
And being on set and making a video with them was kind of like making an album in 4 dimensions.
Wow.
Um, because when you're filming something like that, you're using sound, you're using the lens, you're using the depth of field and the set
Hmm.
and the characters and their emotions, and then you're using light and how light interplays with all of it. And
Hmm.
so it's just all of these combination of things that all sort of come together to create something that is so compelling. And
Hmm.
it's it really has. I mean, this is the first time in the history of Christianity that we've all sort of collectively
Hmm.
had this ability to journey over the next couple of years.
Hmm.
And I just think it's only going to get better and more powerful, not
Hmm.
just because of where the story's headed, but because of the cast and the crew and everyone are bonding in such an amazing way. It's going to be like a once in a generation
Yeah,
kind of thing
totally.
for sure.
Can you just describe for me what is the in between? I mean, I can imagine what you're meaning by that, but just sort of reframe that for us. Like, what are you singing about? What's the message that you're conveying
Yeah,
in that in between?
yeah. I mean, I think that in between death and life, in
Okay.
between, the old me and the new me, in between,
Right.
um, in between being in a difficult situation, getting out of it, uh, you know, in between every person in the scriptures being who they were before they encountered Christ and who they are after,
Mm-hmm.
he is the in between. He is
Yeah.
the thing in between it, you know,
Yeah.
and literally like he was crucified, between two thieves.
Yeah.
So it's like he he's he is that sort of point of transformation, point of conversion, point of um, collision with grace,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, my life's not the same because of him.
Hmm. Beautiful. Well, Matt, this has been an incredible journey that you've taken us on through all these songs, and just want to say thank you for being faithful. I'm so glad you're still around and that you made it through the pandemic, and you
Me
stayed
too.
to your calling, and you're pressing forward, because we need more songs from guys like you that have like the theological depth, the heart for the whole church of the world. The musical depth as well, I think, is something that we need as a church. Someone who gets how to, like, there's an in between, is like in between understanding classical, music theory, and knowing how to just take people in a moment and improvise, and just merging those kinds of worlds, lots of just ways. So I appreciate you. You've been an incredible impact on me, and part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing with Praise Charts and making so many songs available around the world. So we're glad to come alongside of you and be on this journey for the long haul.
Well, thanks so much, and thanks for all the work you're doing, and especially on behalf of worship leaders, because a lot of the
Hmm.
younger ones don't realize how it was to be scribbling a chord chart
Yeah,
40 minutes before service.
totally.
Not that you just to go online and hit a button and print it. So
Yeah,
thanks for all the work you're doing. It's pretty
yeah.
invaluable.
It's our privilege. So, all right, this is Ryan Dahl, Matt Maher. I hope you've enjoyed this powerful, intimate time together with Matt. You're a great man, and enjoy your family, your office there, your kids, the journey of mixing it all together. Look forward to more great music from you, Matt. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much.
Okay, bye
Bye.
then.